Okay, today we're going to talk about imaginary numbers. That is our next unit. So for day one, we're going to talk about simplifying them. Please make sure that you take out a piece of loose leaf paper if you chose not to print out a copy of these notes. So the first thing we need to know is, what is an imaginary number? Basically, an imaginary number is a negative radical and it is notated as an I. Usually it's a script I. So to simplify an imaginary number, the first thing that we're going to do is take the negative out of the radical sign and put an I in front of the radical sign. Then we're going to go back to following the rules to simplify a radical. You're going to find two factors of the number. One should be a perfect square. Take the square root of that perfect square and put it in front. Multiply by anything that is already there, and then leave the other number under the radical. So if we look at our first example, we have the square root of negative 48. So the first thing I notice is it's negative. So I'm going to make that a positive and I'm going to put an I in front. Now I'm going to find two numbers that multiply and give me 48. One of them should be a perfect square. I'm going to choose 16 and 3. The square root of 16 is 4, so that comes out front. 4 times I is 4I. And I still have a radical 3 underneath. That is how we simplify an imaginary number. If I look at the second example, again, the first thing that I notice is that I have a negative. So I'm going to make that positive. I'm going to put an I out front. So now I have 2I, radical 50. I want to find two numbers that multiply to 50. One of them should be a perfect square. I'm going to pick 25 times 2. The square root of 25 is 5. I multiply that by anything in front, so 5 times 2i is 10i, and I still have a radical 2. That is my answer. If I look at number 3, again, as soon as I see the negative under the radical, I'm going to make it a positive, and I'm going to put an I out front. So now I have 5i. Now I look at my 8. Factors of 8 are 4 times 2. If I look at this, I have a square. That's even, so we like even exponents, so I'm going to rewrite a squared b to the 6th. Now I'm going to simplify. The square root of 4 is 2. I cannot simplify a radical 2. The square root of a squared is a, and the square root of b to the 6th is b to the 3rd. So now I'm going to multiply everything in the front. 2 times 5i times a times b to the 3rd. That gives me 10i, a, b to the 3rd. And underneath the radical, I only have a 2. That is simplified. If I look at the next example, again, the first thing I notice is I have a negative, so I'm going to make that positive, and I'm going to put an I out front. So I have 3I. Now I'm looking for factors of 32. 16 times 2 is 32. If I look at the x to the 3rd, to simplify a variable, we want even exponents, so I'm going to rewrite that as x squared x. To simplify y to the 7th, I'm going to rewrite that as y to the 6th, y. Now I'm going to square root what I can. The square root of 16 is 4. The 2 cannot be simplified or square rooted. The square root of x squared is x. You cannot square root a single x. The square root of y to the 6th is y to the 3rd. I cannot simplify a y. I'm going to now multiply everything that's in front. So I end up with 12i x y to the 3rd. And under the radical, I still have a 2, an x, and a y. For those of you that do not like to do your letters this way, quick review. If you wanted to simplify x to the 3rd, we could rewrite it as 3x's. And y to the 7th, we could write out 7y's. And remember, when we're simplifying radicals, since there's a 2 there, it's a 2-for-1 deal. So I have 2x's, 1 comes out. I have 1 pair, 2 pairs, 3 pairs. So that's how I get the y to the third. 1, 2, 3. So here it would be xy to the third, square root, I still have an x and a y, and that is the same as this part of that problem. 2 more examples. So if we look at number, I think this is 6. First thing, I see a negative under the radical. I'm going to make it positive and put an I out front. So I have negative 2i. Then I have the square root of 16. A to the third I'm going to rewrite as a squared a. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of a squared is a. I multiply everything in front, negative 8, I, a, and under the radical I still have an a. If I look at number 7, 8, make the negative a positive and put an I out front. So I have 5i. Numbers for 300, I'm going to do 3 times 100. X squared, because that's even, that's good. Y to the third, I'm going to rewrite as y squared y. I cannot square root of 3. The square root of 100 is 10. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of y squared is y. In front of my radical sign, I'm going to multiply all of those terms together. So 5i times 10 is 50i xy. Under the radical, I still have a 3 and a y. Please make sure that you write down any questions and ask me next time you see me or email me.